Most people will spend their entire lives working hard and still die broke. Not because they lacked effort, not because opportunity skipped them, but because no one ever taught them the one skill that changes everything: how to train your mind. What separates the man driving the car from the man washing it is not talent. It is not education. It is not even luck. It is the internal world, the invisible architecture of belief, thought, and expectation that quietly designs every outcome a person will ever experience. You are about to learn something that schools never taught you, something that most people go an entire lifetime without ever discovering. And if you absorb this fully, not just understand it, but truly install it into the way you operate, your life will never look the same again. Wealth is not hiding from you. Wealth is waiting for you to become someone it can flow through. The moment your mind shifts, everything shifts. The accounts, the opportunities, the relationships, all of it rearranges to match the new version of you. But that version must be built. It must be forged. And it starts right here. So stay close, because what follows is not motivation, it is a blueprint, a step-by-step rewiring of the mind that separates those who talk about wealth from those who quietly accumulate it. The first thing you need to understand is this: your mind is always working. It never stops. Every second of every day, it is processing, filtering, and building conclusions about who you are and what is possible for you. The question is not whether it is doing this. The question is whether you are the one directing it or whether the world is doing it for you. Most people have handed over the keys. They wake up and immediately absorb the anxiety of the news. They scroll through other people's highlight reels before they have even taken a breath. They hear doubt from family, scarcity from coworkers, and fear from the culture around them. And by 9 in the morning, their mind has already been programmed by a dozen outside sources, none of which have their best interests at heart. This is not living. This is drifting. And drifters do not build fortunes. Napoleon Hill spent decades studying the wealthiest minds of his era: Carnegie, Rockefeller, Ford, Edison, and what he found was not what most people expected. These men were not smarter. They were not more connected. They were not born into advantage. What they had was something radically different. They had taken absolute, ruthless, uncompromising control of their inner world. Carnegie did not build the largest steel empire in history by accident. He built it first in his mind. He saw it in complete detail before a single beam was laid. He believed in it so completely, so unwaveringly, that every decision, every partnership, every resource he attracted moved in alignment with that internal picture. His mind was not wishing. It was commanding. That is the beginning of everything. The command. Most people wish. A few people decide. And only those who decide, with the kind of clarity that burns through doubt, that survives failure, that outlasts rejection, those are the ones who build something real. Here is a truth that will sting if you let it. The life you are currently living is a perfect reflection of your dominant thoughts. Not your occasional thoughts. Not your hopeful thoughts. Your dominant thoughts. The ones that run on repeat in the background. The ones you return to when no one is watching. If those thoughts are soaked in scarcity, in comparison, in self-doubt, then no strategy in the world will save you. You can have the best business plan on earth, but if the person executing it secretly believes they don't deserve to win, that belief will quietly sabotage every step. This is why the inner work is not optional. It is not something you do after you build wealth. It is how you build it. So how does this transformation actually happen? How do you go from a mind wired for survival to one wired for creation? It begins with awareness. You cannot change what you cannot see. For the next week, pay attention to the narrative running in your head. When you see a price tag, what does your mind immediately say? When someone around you succeeds, what is your first reaction? When you fail at something, how long does your mind stay in the wound? These reactions are data. They are revealing the programming that is currently running your financial life. And once you see the programming clearly, you can start to rewrite it. The first rewrite is the scarcity language. Every time you catch yourself saying, I can't afford this, pause and replace it with, how do I create the means for this? It sounds simple. It is not easy. But that single shift moves your brain from a closed, defensive posture to an open, creative one. And creative minds find solutions that closed minds never even see. Andrew Carnegie once said that any idea held clearly enough and long enough in the mind will begin to seek its physical equivalent. What he meant was that the mind, when given a clear target and locked onto it with full belief, begins to function like a magnet. It starts pulling in the people, the ideas, the timing, and the resources that make the vision real. This is not mysticism. It is how the mind operates. When you are intensely focused on a specific outcome, your brain's reticular activating system, the filter through which all incoming information is processed, starts highlighting everything relevant to that outcome. Opportunities that were always there suddenly appear visible. Connections that existed all around you suddenly seem obvious. The wealthy did not have access to more opportunity. They had a mind trained to see it. Stay with me, because this next part is where most people make a critical mistake. They understand the concept of positive thinking. They believe in visualization, but they treat it as a one-time exercise rather than a daily discipline. They visualize once, feel inspired, and then go right back to the old mental habits that produce their current results. Transformation does not work that way. Your subconscious mind does not respond to single events. It responds to repetition. It responds to consistency. It responds to the thoughts you return to most frequently over the longest period of time. Thomas Edison did not fail 10,000 times and then suddenly believe in success. He believed in success through 10,000 failures. His belief was not the result of easy wins. It was maintained in spite of crushing setbacks, in spite of exhaustion, in spite of a world that laughed at him. That sustained belief, that refusal to update his identity based on temporary results, is what made him unstoppable. And here is what most people never grasp about that story. Edison was not talented in the ordinary sense. He was not the smartest man in the room, but he had developed a discipline of mind so ironclad, so immovable, that failure simply could not get a permanent foothold. Each failure was processed as information, not as identity. Each setback was logged as a lesson, not internalized as proof of inadequacy. That is the mental move you must make. You must stop allowing results to define you. Results are temporary. Identity is the force that creates results. And you choose your identity, not based on what has happened, based on what you have decided. Walt Disney was bankrupt. He was laughed at. He was told by people in positions of authority that his ideas were childish and his imagination was limited. He pitched a vision that most of the world considered impossible, and he did not waver, not because he had evidence that it would work, but because his internal picture was more real to him than the opinions of people who could not see what he saw. He had built Disneyland in his mind so completely, so vividly, so tangibly, that the physical version was almost inevitable. The external world was simply catching up to what already existed in his imagination. You must learn to operate this way, not from the evidence in front of you, but from the vision inside you. Now let's talk about the vision itself, because there is a version of vision that is nothing more than daydreaming, and there is a version of vision that is a weapon. The difference is specificity. When Napoleon Hill interviewed the wealthiest men of his generation and asked them about their goals, not one of them said something vague. Not one of them said, I want to be successful, or I hope to be comfortable one day. Every single one of them could describe exactly what they were building, exactly how much wealth they were targeting, exactly what they would do with it, and exactly when they expected to have it. Vague desires produce vague results. Specific vision produces specific movement. So here is your assignment. Not someday. Right now, when this ends. Write down exactly what financial reality you are building. Not a rough idea. Exact numbers. Exact timelines. Exact description of the life. Make it so precise that if a stranger read it, they could picture the exact day you are working toward. Because here is what happens when you do this. Your brain shifts from passive hoping to active pursuit. The goal stops feeling like a fantasy and starts feeling like a destination. And the mind, when it has a clear destination, begins navigating toward it automatically, even while you sleep, even when you are not consciously thinking about it. This is the power of the definite chief aim. Hill called it one of the most foundational principles of wealth creation, not because it is magic, but because a mind without a clear target scatters its energy in 1,000 directions, and a mind with a single, burning, unambiguous target channels every ounce of its power toward one point. The results are incomparable. But here is the part that separates the ones who visualize from the ones who build: action. Vision without movement is just fiction. You can see the future clearly, believe in it deeply, feel it fully, and still accomplish nothing if your body does not begin to move in the direction of that vision. Napoleon Hill was not teaching people how to wish effectively. He was teaching people how to align the full power of the mind and the full force of disciplined action into one unstoppable force. The successful people he studied were not passive dreamers, they were obsessive builders. Carnegie did not just imagine steel, he worked with staggering intensity. Ford did not just envision the automobile, he worked his engineers relentlessly until the vision became real. Edison did not just believe in the light bulb, he showed up every single day, often sleeping in his own laboratory, because the vision demanded everything. Your wealth will demand everything too, not in a way that destroys you, but in a way that grows you. Every time you choose the disciplined action over the comfortable retreat, you become a slightly more powerful version of yourself. Every time you do the hard thing when you could have done the easy thing, you are wiring your brain for success in a way that no course or book can replicate. Discipline is not a restriction, it is a superpower, and it is built one small decision at a time. Let us also talk about the environment, because this is something Hill understood deeply, and most people drastically underestimate. The people around you are either expanding your mind or contracting it. There is rarely a middle ground. If your closest circle thinks that wealth is for other people, that luck is the primary driver of success, that security matters more than vision, then no matter how hard you work on your mindset in private, you will be fighting an uphill battle. Their programming will be constantly leaking into your own. This is not about dismissing people you care about. It is about being deliberate with your mental diet. Seek out individuals who think bigger than you do. Seek out minds that challenge your assumptions, that stretch your sense of what is possible, that make you feel slightly uncomfortable with how small you have been playing, because the mind grows in the direction it is stretched. And the fastest way to stretch it is to place yourself near people who are already operating at the level you aspire to reach. Your environment is always programming you. The question is whether you are designing that environment deliberately or absorbing it passively. Now let us face something uncomfortable. Because the truth is, most people who will hear this will feel inspired. They will nod. They will think, yes, this makes sense. And then they will go back to the exact same patterns they arrived with. Why? Because the gap between knowing and becoming is not filled with more information. It is filled with repetition, practice, and the willingness to feel uncomfortable on purpose. The mental rewiring that produces lasting wealth is not comfortable. It requires you to sit with disbelief and choose faith anyway. It requires you to face failure and choose to see data instead of doom. It requires you to hear rejection and refuse to allow it to become part of your story. This is the inner game. And the people who win the inner game win the outer game, almost automatically. Henry Ford, when he decided to build the V8 engine, was told by every expert around him that it was a mechanical impossibility. He did not argue, he did not debate the engineers, he simply told them to keep going, because his mind had already determined that the result was inevitable. The challenge was not a reason to stop. It was simply a stage in the process. That is a trained mind. A mind that has been conditioned to treat obstacles as necessary parts of the journey rather than signals to retreat. You must train your mind the same way. Every time you encounter a wall, instead of asking whether you should continue, Ask what the wall is trying to teach you. Every time something does not work, instead of questioning your worthiness, question your strategy. The worthiness is non-negotiable. The strategy is always adjustable. Wealth is not a reward for the lucky. It is a result for the disciplined, the clear, and the relentlessly persistent. And persistence is not stubbornness. It is the long game. It is understanding that the most valuable things in life take time to build, and that the people who refuse to honor that reality end up either giving up too early or cutting corners that collapse later. The truly wealthy are patient, not passive, patient. There is a profound difference. The passive person waits for conditions to change. The patient person works every single day while trusting that the compounding of disciplined effort will eventually break through every resistance, and it always does. That is not hope. That is how the mathematics of effort works. Your daily habits are your destiny in slow motion. What you do each morning for 30 minutes is shaping the kind of person you will be in 5 years. What you choose to feed your mind every day is building or dismantling the mental infrastructure of wealth. These are not dramatic declarations. They are quiet truths that separate those who eventually build something from those who eventually wonder what happened. Read, not passively, but actively. Engage with the ideas of people who have built what you want to build. Let their thinking reshape your thinking. Let their frameworks challenge the assumptions you inherited from environments that were never designed to produce wealth. Visualize. Daily. Not as a ritual you rush through, but as a genuine mental rehearsal. See the version of your life you are building. Walk through it in your imagination with such detail that your emotional state begins to respond as if it is already real. Because when your emotions align with your vision, the motivation to act stops being something you have to manufacture. It becomes something you cannot suppress. And affirm. Not the shallow repetition of words you do not believe, but the deliberate, concentrated installation of truths about who you are becoming. Not, I am rich, if your mind immediately rejects it, but I am becoming the kind of thinker who creates wealth. I am building the habits that produce abundance. I am more aligned with my vision today than I was yesterday. Truths the mind can accept. Truths that pull you forward rather than statements that trigger disbelief. This is how change actually works. Gradually, then suddenly. You are laying invisible groundwork for months. You feel like nothing is shifting. And then one day the whole thing breaks open. The opportunity arrives, the partnership forms, the idea clicks into place, and it looks to everyone on the outside like luck. But you know the truth. You built it, brick by invisible brick, in the quiet hours when no one was watching. That is the wealth that lasts. Not the windfall, not the shortcut. The wealth that is grown from the inside out, from a mind that was trained, disciplined, and pointed with absolute precision at a vision that mattered enough to fight for. So here is where you stand right now. You have a choice. Not a dramatic, cinematic choice. A quiet one. The choice to take one idea from this and actually implement it today. To write the vision down. To reclaim the first 30 minutes of your morning. To replace one scarcity thought with a creative one. To reach out to one person who challenges you to grow. One move, not 50. One. Because the gap between where you are and where you want to be is not closed in one giant leap. It is closed in 10,000 small, deliberate, consistent steps taken by a mind that has been trained to keep moving. Your mind is the first fortune you must build. Before the business, before the investment, before the strategy, the mind. Because with a wealthy mind, you will always find a way to create the external wealth you seek. But without it, the external wealth, even if it arrives, will not stay. Train your mind. Protect it like your most valuable asset, because it is. Feed it with vision. Discipline it with action. Stretch it with purpose, and guard it from every force that tries to shrink it back to the ordinary. The world will try to convince you to be reasonable, to be realistic, to manage your expectations, and you will smile because you understand something the world does not. Reality is not fixed. It is shaped by the minds that refuse to accept it as a ceiling. You are one of those minds, or you are becoming one. And that decision, that quiet, firm, unwavering decision, is the most powerful thing you will ever make. If this connected with something inside you, if it shifted even one thought, then you already know where this journey goes next. Join us at Alpha Logic, where we go deeper into these principles every single week, the ideas that build minds, and the minds that build empires. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and bring someone who needs this with you, because the greatest gift you can give another person is the one you just gave yourself. The decision to think differently. Train your mind. The rest has no choice but to follow.